Thanks for tuning in, or for those of you who are going to see this video later, thank you for joining. Thank you for clicking on this video. So I'm making this early in the morning, or rather early-ish in the morning in the UK. The time is 8:43. That's British summertime. I don't I don't tend to make live streams in the morning. I tend to do them in the evening in the UK. The problem with that is that I did one last night, for example, at 7:45 British summertime, and obviously those who are in the USA are probably highly unlikely to be watching. So I just thought I would make this morning video to see if I can catch anybody who's actually in the, either just going to bed and just having a quick look to see if anything new has been posted. And if so, you can find me talking here about certain things. Mainly, the topic is, should Matt Dillahunty keep his Zen on his call-in shows? Does it really matter? Should anybody be concerned? Should he be concerned? And would it be sort of objectively better to present a less temperamental show? That's really the question. I've been watching Matt Dillahunty personally for about 10 years when I first became interested in online atheist content. Like many of you, I found the Atheist Experience a very interesting show, and I more or less started watching the shows as they were being put out, but I also looked at the back catalogue of Atheist Experience broadcasts going all the way back to, I think the very early days, which was about, was it 1999, 2000, when Jeff D and some of the others were at Martin Wagner, who started off the show. So I went all the way back, and then of course eventually Matt Dillahunty appeared, and things suddenly became a lot more interesting because almost immediately when he appeared, he became probably the prominent figure for the Atheist Experience. He was the one that seemed to be dealing with calls better than anybody else. He was the one that seemed to be able to counter virtually any apologetics argument. And he could also deal with callers who were being less than honest and maybe less than respectful. And he also did it in quite a sort of amusing way. So, and to be honest with you, in those days, he seemed to keep his Zen. It's funny how this word Zen has become, I don't know, like a buzzword for people who can keep their cool. And I suppose I understand. You think about a Zen master, sitting with his legs crossed, surrounded by adoring disciples, smiling knowingly, and absolutely nothing can ruffle his feathers. So yeah, I understand why the word Zen, and I think it's quite a nice phrase there. Keep his Zen. He often comes on. Matt often comes onto the show every week and says, "I'm going to keep my Zen this week," or maybe I'm not going to keep my Zen. And things can go downhill very, very quickly on the line. I've noticed it only takes. Matt can be in a really good mood. Let's say he's had a fabulous Saturday at a snake convention, selling, I don't know, dozens of snakes, or meeting other snake owners and talking about the wonders of, I don't know, rattlesnakes and pythons and whatever other snakes he's interested in. He could have had an absolutely fantastic Saturday, and then he comes onto the line. He's smiling, he's happy, he's had a good weekend with Arden, and it only takes one particular kind of caller to really trigger him and initiate this explosive temper, which, let's face it, he has got. But in terms of the way that he deals with people who call in honestly, want to engage, he tends to do a very, very good job on the whole. I wouldn't say that in particular he's doing a better job in that sense than he was 10 years ago, because I think 10 years ago he was probably listening a lot better, I think, in those days. If you go back 10 years, you will find that he's got more patience with people, that he's not triggered quite so easily, that, somebody over talking him, he had a kind of better way of dealing with it in those days. And I find that now what's happening is that if somebody calls in with a little bit of an attitude, then the call might as well just be over, because nothing good is going to come of it. So, for example, on Sunday night, who called in? Jerry. Yeah, Jerry called in, and he called in saying, "Well, I discovered you guys recently, and I'm not really too sure whether it's worth me wasting my time watching your show to see whether I'm going to get sucked down the rabbit hole." And actually, I thought it was a really bad start, because I always like people to come in and say, well, I believe in God, or I don't believe in God, and then make their point, and then things can really get going. But let's face it, not everybody does that. People like to call in with a bit of preamble. And Jimmy quite rightly said, well, it's not my job to sit here and sell this show to you. Let's have you challenge us, which I think was exactly the right thing to say. You've got to be calling in. If you're going to call in, it's a big thing to actually call an atheist show. It's a big thing to call any show. You've got to prepare something to say. You've got to preferably write something down, have something to say, have a point to make. There's no point just calling in and saying, oh, you guys, I really love you. You really turned my life around. Matt, you've got so much intellect. And that is absolutely not what the show is about. It's not the Matt Dillahunty Appreciation Society. And that is absolutely one thing that does trigger Matt, and that he doesn't like, and is one big complete waste of time. I'm surprised that the call screeners don't advise callers that when they hear the introduction, in other words, oh, hello, it's John calling from Kansas or something like that. Hello, John, how are you? And then they should be told that as soon as the pleasantries are out of the way, in other words, they reply, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? Oh, I'm fine as well. Make your point, no preamble, get on with it. If you've come in with a point. If I was a call screener, I would say, what is it that you want to say to Matt Dillahunty? What do you want to ask? What point do you want to make? And if they start, meandering around and saying, oh, I'm not really too sure, I just really wanted to call in and maybe talk about God with him, that's not really focused enough. You've got to come on with a focused point, because you can't come on and say, oh, well, let's just sort of generally talk about God. That's for a 6-hour session at 2:00 in the morning, with a bottle of wine or something like that, or smoking weed, if that's your thing. That's not for an atheist show, where there's very little time, comparatively speaking, and you've got thousands or hundreds, thousands of people who are listening. And let's face it, it's a business as well. It's how Jimmy Snow makes a living, and Matt Dillahunty obviously makes money out of it as well, which is fair enough. But it is content creation, and they've got to ensure that quality content is being created. And in order to do that, I think that call screening, I don't know how they do their call screening, but so many time wasting calls come on. I've got to presume that the call screeners could be doing a better job to prevent this, unless people are coming on and lying about what they're going to talk about, and then or when they actually get on and start talking to Matt, it's like I don't know, rabbits in headlights. It's something like that they lose the point of what they wanted to say. That could be avoided if only they would make notes, put notes in front of them, have questions down in points and bullet points, and then they could keep on track. But really, they need to start off with one question or one point and then go from there, because religion is such an absolutely vast subject. It's not going to work if just people just come on and meander around. So Jerry came on, and I didn't straight away when he come on. I wondered, well, what's his point? He's just coming on to say, well, he's picked up the show. He didn't want to get sucked down a rabbit hole, and that's not really a point, is it? And then Jimmy kind of challenged him to make a point, and the call didn't really go anywhere until nothing really happened in the call until Jimmy said to Jerry that, I don't know why he said this. I've actually made a video. I've done a reaction video on this already. You can go and have a look at it on my channel. I uploaded it this morning and I've made it live. So I'm just commenting on that again, really. But Jimmy made the really strange point. Two strange points he made. One is he said, I don't care if you ever watch again. Well, okay, fair enough. He doesn't like the caller, and he doesn't really. He's indifferent to that particular call ever watching again. I would never say that personally, because I'm in business myself, and every single person that comes to me with a question or with an order or anything like that, it matters to me how it proceeds from there. Somebody's come to me, I'm in business, and I've got to help them, whether I'm going to get a return for it or not. Because if people come to me and I can't sell anything to them, then I will usually send them somewhere where they can get the item that they need. The only time, of course, when I don't help people in my business is if they've got a bad attitude. Then yeah, I admit I don't help people in that case. For example, if somebody sends me in an offer for one of the products I'm selling and it's a derisory offer, I often won't answer, or I'll block the person from buying from me because they're just not serious. And maybe that's the case it was with Jerry, because Jimmy said, I don't care if you ever watch again. And then he said that, no, that wasn't too strange. What was really strange is that he then followed that up with, I don't care if anybody ever watches again. Now that was something which sounded really bizarre. I'm a YouTuber, and I can tell you that if my audience collapsed overnight, in other words, if I was uploading videos and just getting, like, say, 2 or 3 views every video, that would be it. I would be finished on YouTube, and that would be the end. I would be very disappointed. I would be sad for a while. I would bounce back, but I would think that I'd failed horribly in some way, that my viewership had collapsed overnight. I had no more viewers. So yeah, I do care. I do care about having viewers. I want to have people coming and watching. And yes, I do care about that. So it sounded strange to me that, and I don't depend on this for my living, whereas I think Jimmy does. So that sounded even more bizarre. And I can tell you, I'm in business. I'm on trading online. And when I see my sales slipping, as they do occasionally, believe me, I care a lot. And that is something to care about. That is something to be afraid of, in fact. And it makes me, it motivates me to work. So bear in mind that Jimmy's not trading online like I am. He's not selling physical products, but he is selling a product. And that product is content, atheist content, for atheists, but also for anybody who wants to watch it. And he's obviously monetized and making money, and he relies on money, or at least he said that he relies on money, and he's got people working for him who rely on that money too. So I consider it to be a bizarre statement to say that he doesn't care if anybody ever watches again. That is just really strange. And I can understand why immediately the caller said, well, that's a lie. Now, he shouldn't have said that. You can't really accuse people of lying like that. I think Jimmy was being a bit sort of hyperbolic, and he was pumped up a bit, and he made a statement that maybe he didn't really fully mean. But I can understand absolutely why the caller said that's a lie. Jimmy's saying he doesn't care if anybody ever watches again. And that did not sound genuine. It did not sound honest. He was probably being hyperbolic or something, or I don't know. It's just, I mean, look, if I went to a restaurant and the owner said, and I was sort of saying, oh, do you have anything else on the menu? Is this all you've got? And he said, well, I don't care if you never come again here. And I would just walk out. I would say, okay, fair enough. If you don't care about your customers, then if you don't care about whether you're going to have customers or not, I presume you don't really care about the quality of your business. So I'll take my business elsewhere. And Jimmy's kind of saying the same thing by saying he doesn't care whether anybody watches again. He's sort of saying he doesn't care about his business. Now, I know that he must care about his business, and therefore I think that maybe he wasn't being entirely accurate when he said he doesn't care if nobody ever watches again. Because then he followed up and he said, Well, after he said that, he then went up and said, however, we make good quality content, etc., etc., etc. And for those people that enjoy the content, then we're here for you. But he's just already said, we don't care. I don't care if anybody ever watches again, but we make good quality content. And for those of you who enjoy that content, here we are. The two statements, when you put them together, they don't kind of, they're not kind of consistent. That's my only problem. I won't do business with people who don't care if customers come to them, whether they come to them or not. If I know that that's people's attitude, then I won't bother going to that business. Simple as that. So I understand why the caller said that's a lie, because it didn't sound genuine. You know, I understand absolutely when you're live, you sometimes get worked up and you want to make some big statement. You want to show people, oh, I don't really care about any of this. You know, nothing can ruffle my feathers. I've read the book, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and all this kind of thing. And so I understand that people get pumped up and they can say these things and then maybe come to regret saying them. Why did I say that? That's why it's important that when you're doing these shows, sometimes you've got to take a deep breath. You might be saying something for effect, which is completely not the case. And I'm fairly sure that Jimmy does care about whether he's got people coming to him, and whether even with Jerry, he probably thinks, oh, I wish, you know, I hope that Jerry does come back. I hope we can change his mind, and you know, we can make something good out of it. I don't think he had an absolutely awful attitude, Jerry. I don't think that it was irrecoverable, but I think that the way that Jimmy and Matt both dealt with it, that kind of ending was inevitable. And I think that Jimmy was on the right lines when he said, we want you to challenge us. And he should have really nailed down there and said, what is your point? What have you come on with? What is the point you want to put to us so that we can have a discussion? And either of them could have said that at any time and said, right, let's cool this down. What's your point? You must have a point. You've taken the trouble to call in, and let's try and have a proper discussion. And then if he was still being sarcastic and saying, oh, you just want to, you know, you're just in it for attention and you're just in it for the money, and you know, you're scared, you won't really debate anybody, then really, if he's just coming on to score empty points like that and then run away, then clearly the conversation isn't going anywhere. But maybe he had a real point that could have been spoken about. Okay. Right. Let me just have a look at some of your comments. So we've got Wesley Curry. I'm not really too sure what's going on here. All right, Wesley Curry, thank you very much for your preaching. Thank you. Maybe you will wake up out of your arrogant blindness. Maybe not. Okay, that's fine. Well, Wesley, if you believe in a God, pray to your God that I can believe like you, and that I could have some kind of experience, or that your God might reveal himself to me so that I can believe. Okay? So anyway, bye. Bye for now. So yeah, the other thing that Jimmy said, which I found was a bit strange, is that he doesn't like being in the public eye. For somebody like him, being in the public eye, being a public figure sucks. That struck me as being really bizarre as well, because after all, Jimmy chose to get into YouTube monetization and YouTube shows and channels where he was going to be putting himself out there, his face and his voice, and yet he's saying that he doesn't like being a public figure. Jimmy, don't estimate yourself. You're not a public figure. You know, I mean, outside of, I mean, a public figure is probably somebody like Ricky Gervais, who is well known around the world to millions in many different spheres, in stand-up comedy, in film, and you know, all that kind of thing. He's been on talk shows in America. He's kind of a household name. I mean, that's a public figure. People like you and me, Jimmy, I know you've got more viewers than I have, but I don't regard myself as a public figure. Otherwise, you'd have to argue that all those people out there with 10, 20 subscribers who are doing videos, they're also public figures as well. So don't flatter yourself. You're not a public figure, but all the same, you're saying that you don't like for you, being a public figure sucks, and yet you got into this business. You chose to get into this business. Coming back to my restaurant analogy, it's like, what shall I say? It's like a restaurateur, somebody starting a restaurant saying they don't like watching people eat food, or they don't like, or it's like a chef saying, "Oh, I became a chef. It's a good way to earn a living, but for me, it sucks because I don't like cooking food." It's really kind of strange that anybody would say such a thing who has got a YouTube channel, and as part of that involves actually appearing in front of the viewers, because there are YouTubers who never appear. They just do videos. Their face never appears. They either talk and they put up imagery and videos, and maybe they don't like appearing in front of the camera. So there's a couple of potentially disingenuous things that Jimmy said on that call. One is that he doesn't care if anybody ever watches his show ever again. And then the other thing is he said that it sucks being in the public eye for somebody like him. I don't know what he means by somebody like him, but okay, so we'll let that go for now. But I did make a reaction video to that, so I suppose if you want to listen to all the points I've already made, but you can also see my reaction to what is actually going on in the call. The other thing that I'm going to do this morning, just very briefly, because the live stream that I did last night, and I'm only actually on this particular live stream, unless somebody comes in on the chat with some interesting points that I can talk about, then I'm going to close this live stream down in about 10 minutes or so. So I'm just drinking my morning coffee. And by the way, I drink ground fresh coffee. I don't drink instant coffee unless I'm really desperate and I haven't got any ground coffee. I also don't buy expensive ground coffee. I buy decaf. In US dollars, the coffee that I buy, it's something like probably $3 or $4 a packet. There's even cheaper coffee available. I don't find the difference in coffee quality to be significant enough to go out and pay, like, I don't know, say $10 for a standard size packet of coffee, which I think is about 250 grams or something like that. So yeah, I do drink cheap coffee and I find it adequate. So yeah, we've got the Bible here. So I brought up Proverbs. I was just kind of looking for things to talk about last night, and I was talking about the Bible, that it's a stupendous document. I mean, let's face it, I don't believe in the existence of God or any of the supernatural claims, but the Holy Bible, all put together, all those books, it's something really probably that every household should have. There is wisdom in it. There are good things in it. And I think the book of Proverbs, there's the book of Proverbs. It's certainly worth reading those. What blender do you use? All right. I don't kind of blend coffee. I don't grind it down or anything. I bought it. I buy it ready ground. Now I know that purists will say that you should grind your beans, and I agree with you. Ground beans taste better than ready ground. If you mean how do I cook my coffee, I do it in a cafetiere. That's how I do it. I also have a pour through which I use, and I find that the results from a pour through, like a kind of filter coffee, actually is quite good. So there are real connoisseurs with coffee who go out and spend 2,000 or 3,000 on a coffee machine, and I've had some amazing coffees from coffee shops. Most of the coffees I get from coffee shops, frankly, are no better than the coffees that I make here with filter coffee or cafetiere. I mean, obviously, it's difficult to make a latte at home unless you've got the equipment. You need a special thing to froth the milk and everything, and there's a special technique. I've been to places that make amazing lattes that I don't have a prayer of making. So it's worth going to coffee shops for that. Or mocha. I enjoy mocha. I mean, the coffee that I make is very primitive. I use about a fifth milk and then the rest medium strength coffee. So I find it adequate. So let me see. Yes. So the book of Proverbs. So I read out a couple of Proverbs and then interpreted them. And, there are so many good Proverbs. And then somebody in the chat said to me, go to Proverbs 1 verse 7. So I did that and I read it out, and I just sort of smiled after I read it out because I wasn't ready to. This is why I don't think I'd be much good on the line on a call-in show, because I often think about what I should have said later on, and on something like the line, you've got to be absolutely on the money. You've got to be there with the right comment at the time, and so this somebody in the chat said, "Yeah, go to Proverbs 1 verse 7." Okay, I'll just read it out. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Yeah, so when I read that, I kind of laughed a bit, and you know, but I thought about it a bit later how I should have responded, because in a way, all the proverbs are claims, and a lot of them are claims of the type that sort of speak for themselves, and they don't really need too much investigation. But when you've got a verse like the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, you've got to first of all, that of course is a claim, and it's predicated on the existence of God. That's the only problem with me from my worldview. I don't believe that God exists, so that did not resonate with me. But I mean, drilling down into it, when you start reading the Bible, you start to see, for example, in the Ten Commandments, that the authority of God is a big thing, and obedience to God is a big thing as well. So we've got the Adam and Eve story, and a lot of that is about the authority of God, that the sin was transgressing God's law about this special tree, original sin. And we see it here in Proverbs verse 7, chapter 1. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So that if you fear and consequently you're obedient to God's laws, then you can acquire this knowledge. This is God's gift to you in return for obedience. Now, last night when I read this, it was very late at night. I've been doing the live stream for 2 hours. I wasn't ready for that intellectually, but I read it this morning and I've kind of figured out what it means. So yeah, intellectually, but I read it this morning and I've kind of figured out what it means. So yeah, obedience to God, following God's laws, that's the essence of, I suppose, in a way, Judaism. Then it will all open up to you. You will gain knowledge. Now, what kind of knowledge? That's the thing. What kind of knowledge are we talking about? That's the question I would want to ask, and it's not really made explicit here. The truth, I suppose, the truth will be revealed to you. Yeah, but what truth? What are we talking about here? So yeah, I've got two things here. First of all, obviously, it didn't resonate with me because I don't believe in God, but I understand the essence of what it's saying. And then there's a follow-up: fools despise wisdom and instruction. Well, that kind of, yeah, I mean, really, I suppose what that is saying is that fools are those who do not either believe in God or do not accept God's authority. And they're ones that nobody can convince. And I suppose that for a lot of Christians, that would be people like me, because I've rejected God. Knowledge won't open up to me, and I would be classed as a fool in the eyes of a lot of Christians and believers. For that reason, knowledge and the truth will never open up to me because I reject God. Now, in the footnotes here, it says here, for that word fools, the Hebrew words rendered fool in Proverbs and often elsewhere in the Old Testament denote a person who is morally deficient. Yeah, okay, so somebody who somebody who basically does not lead a righteous life, somebody who's morally deficient, and that could include lots of things. They've got no moral code, they've got no moral base, and so they just live their lives selfishly, taking into account only their own needs, and they don't submit to the will of God. That would be, I suppose, that would be somebody who's morally deficient, and they've used this word here, fools, which in the context of Proverbs and in keeping with the style of Proverbs is a more poetic translation than obviously somebody who is morally deficient, and I think works quite well. Okay, so that's my response to chapter 1, verse 7. Okay, I'm just going to look at some of your comments and then probably Let's have a look. Mike Foster, my sense is that I totally understand that Matt needs to shut down silly arguments hard because other theists are too apt to take him on a long walk through presuppositions. Okay. But I think Matt too often shuts down people very quickly before the point is made. Matt might guess what they were going to say, but especially for new viewers, we're left not hearing it. Yeah, okay, well, that's true. I agree with you there. Okay, just coming back to this thing about Matt and bad tempers and everything like that. So you've never really seen me, in all the videos I've made, you've never really seen me have a bad temper. I am capable of losing my temper very, very rarely. And when I do, I feel really bad about it. I feel like I feel like I've let myself down. And if anybody else is around seeing me get in a bad mood, I feel like I've let them down as well, and that they deserve an apology. And I actually lost my temper once at the weekend. I was driving up a country road. It was a one-way country road, and there was a turning place, and somebody had parked their car in this turning place, and I suddenly found I wanted to turn around, and I couldn't turn because some idiot had parked in the turning place, and I had somebody with me, a female, and I swore and I got angry. And later on, I apologized because I don't want to demonstrate my bad temper to anybody. And obviously, as a result of that, I then had to drive a mile up this dirt track, and eventually I managed to turn around. But I was angry with the person who parked their car in a turning place. Yeah. So I'm capable of losing my temper. But in terms of, this kind of format, I would never want to lose my face on any of these videos that I do. And if I did my own call-in show, I would want to make it a golden rule that I never lose my temper. A very good friend of mine once gave me some advice because, we were out somewhere, and I can't remember the exact context, but I happened to kind of lose my temper a little bit in front of somebody. This was going back about 25 years. And he said to me, don't let other people see that you're rattled. Don't let other people, don't let other people know that they've had that effect upon you. Don't give them that satisfaction, and also don't lose your face in front of other people. And I thought about that a lot, and there have been many occasions since then when I took a deep breath at times. If I was in a situation where somebody was trying to rattle me, then I would try to avoid that happening. And definitely with thousands, or in my case, hundreds or whatever people watching, losing my temper in front of other people is absolutely the last thing that I would want to do. And if I was prone to lose my temper on either my channel or in call-in shows, then I wouldn't be doing them. But obviously, Matt's his own person, and he can do exactly what he wants. And it doesn't really seem to bother him too much that, as in his own language, he loses his Zen mode. So I guess that it's good for business because, let's face it, a lot of people tune in to see Matt get angry. And he's become the kind of archetypal angry atheist, hasn't he? That apologists can say, well, look, if you want to see what atheism does for you, just go and watch The Line and see how Matt Dillahunty handles himself. Because people will say, well, if that's what not being a believer is, if that's what atheism is, then atheism is no good. And people do actually think like that. And to be fair, I mean, of all the people like Justin Brierley and who else are there? William Lane Craig and a lot of the Christians who are out there doing these debates with atheists. I don't tend to see them getting in a really bad mood, and they could say, well, look, the reason I don't get in a bad mood is because I've got righteousness on my side, I've got truth on my side, and God is up there, and God wants me to represent Christianity in the right way, and I've been chosen because I'm out there in front of thousands, hundreds of thousands of viewers. Yes, there are Christians who call in and they get angry and they use bigoted languages on the line, but God's chosen me because he wouldn't have chosen one of those callers to do that job because they don't understand Christianity. They're not true Christians, but I am a true Christian. I've got the light of Jesus on me. I've got the truth of the Lord on me, and I've been blessed by the Holy Spirit, and that's why I'm representing Christianity. The reason that Matt Dillahunty is getting angry and he's losing his zen is because God is up there looking down and he's making Matt angry. He wants to demonstrate that atheism is not the way to go. You can easily, as a Christian, make that argument. Okay, let's have a look. Phil Garrett, yeah, I think you're right. Matt seems far too comfortable losing his temper in front of lots of people, which just screams arrogance. Matt's not someone I'd go for a beer with. I think we'd end up arguing just because I didn't agree with everything he says. Be human, otherwise Havan something host your show. It doesn't always look good that he doesn't lose his temper when debating Peterson, presumably because he hold him in higher esteem. But yeah, okay. So, well, the thing is, when he debated Peterson, he wasn't at the point in Matt's career when he was debating Peterson. He wasn't getting ultra angry on the atheist experience at that time. He could lose his temper now and again, but nothing like what we've seen recently. And he was still relatively calm atheist, able to rebut people, even insulting people, without losing his temper out of all proportion. So when he debated Peterson, he was still relatively in a kind of Zen way of being. This is something that seems to have happened more recently. But yeah, for sure, I've noticed, of course, that when Matt does debates with people, on the whole, he doesn't tend to lose his temper in the same way that he calls people jackass and bigot, etc., piece of shit on the line. So it depends on who your customers are. And if he's sharing a stage, which he never will do again, let's face it. I mean, his days of spending sharing the stage with Richard Dawkins, Jordan Peterson, D'Souza, Sam Harris, and all these people, they're over. Look, I know it, you know it. He's not going to be invited to any of these highbrow events ever again. Richard Dawkins has got, invitations that could keep him going for 100 lifetimes, speaking at universities around the world. That kind of thing is never going to happen to Matt Dillahunty. He's not an academic. I think he's very, very clever, and he's very sharp. But because of the way that he's gone, he's turned on people that he has previously debated with. I mean, he's sat on a stage with Richard Dawkins, and they've kind of polished each other's egos, talking about their atheism and how hopelessly out of touch with reality Christians are, etc. And now he's turned around and called Dawkins a bigoted piece of shit. I mean, look, he's obviously never going to share the stage with anybody of any note ever again, because of the fact that he's turned on people, because Dawkins' views on transgenderism do not resonate with his own. That's another matter. I like Dawkins a lot, not for his views on transgenderism, but I still think that he's got a lot to offer, and I enjoy listening to him, and I watch his content. He's not perfect. He's not the best apologist. He's not the best counter apologist, because he lacks a lot of philosophical knowledge, but he's got, he's quite sharp when he's talking to Christians. He usually asks the right questions. So with Matt Dillahunty, he's obviously decided that it's okay for him to do those things on the line. He must have spoken to Jimmy about it, and Jimmy said that's fine. And in a sense, I'm surprised that the channel is monetized, because YouTube's quite fussy with profanity and that kind of thing. And I sometimes think that if the wrong person, the wrong high-ranking executive watched the line and saw that it was monetized and saw what happens in some of the calls, I think it's possible that they might permanently lose monetization. I know that YouTube uses certain software to detect words that are being used, certain words, and they can demonetize your channel very quickly if they don't like the way that you're doing things, and if there's a lot of swearing going on and that sort of thing, and potential abuse of callers, then they could soon pull the plug financially on what you're doing. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Okay, Mike Foster says Matt's composed performance versus Peterson probably sealed the deal for making Peterson look wishy-washy. It's probably not too difficult to make Peterson look wishy-washy. He does it all. He does that all by himself. In terms of the way that Matt dealt with Peterson, I think he did a fairly good job. I think he could have done better. I think he could have exposed him a bit more. P. Barnes says, I think that he probably puts on a persona when he's taking calls. Unfortunately, it's a way to reach a bigger audience. I don't know. You're saying there that he would want, he would want to appear that way. He would want to appear as an angry, out of control, way out of control atheist, almost like a bit of a loose cannon. I don't really think that anybody would want to present themselves in that way. Objectively, Dan is terrific when it comes to getting theists on his side, while still having some barbed critiques. Russell Glasser was my favorite. Yeah, Russell Glasser was good. It's a shame that the lighting's not looking too good on my video. There's too much light coming in. I'm just going to try and reduce the light. That's a bit better. So just brought the blinds down a bit. Okay, so objectively, Dan, I can't really recall him. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, all right. So I don't really know what else to say. Nobody's really made any further comments. I don't know what you mean by wishy-washy. Sorry, Hill Hugger. I can't remember what I just said. Did I use the term wishy-washy? Okay, well, obviously, what I mean by wishy-washy is somebody who won't make a focused point. Somebody who won't make a focused, coherent point, which is fairly easy to understand. So yeah, I'm talking about, of course, Peterson. He's a bit wishy-washy with the way that he, especially when he's asked about religion. If you say to him, do you believe in God? He will immediately dodge and say, well, let's break that down, because we've got to understand what the question is and we've got to define our terms. And then he starts, so what does that mean? And then, he plays this game, and he will prevaricate and just keep on stringing it out. It's fairly obvious to me that Jordan Peterson, because of all the, if anybody who really truly believes in a personal God that really objectively exists, won't be afraid to just say, yes, I do believe that there is actually a real God that exists, a thinking agent, a mind that has tremendous powers. I mean, anybody that really believes that there's a real God should not have to go about breaking down the question. And virtually anybody, if you ask them, do you believe in God, they'll either say, well, yes or no. Then they might say, well, it depends on which God. I'm a deist, or something like that. Whereas Jordan Peterson, he looks to me like he's deliberately being dishonest with the way that he creates these diversions. And so even with, for example, Alex O'Connor spent 2 hours talking to him and still couldn't get a proper answer out of him. So that's what I mean by wishy-washy, insufficient focus and definition of what he's saying. Because if what he's saying is properly defined, it shouldn't be difficult for people to understand. We've got a shared discourse. We can't go back down to linguistic roots and start talking about what does the definite article mean. We already presume that we understand we're speaking the same language, we're speaking English, and we can't go back and spend hours and hours drilling down what individual words mean. We have to presume that when you say, do you believe in God, that we understand what is being said. That do you accept the proposition, a personal, an actual agent, a real God actually objectively exists? Do you accept that proposition or not? There's a video of Peterson telling his students that an ancient picture of a double helix is literally them drawing DNA. Okay, ironically, I think I'm just reading some of your comments. This is Phil Garrett. I think that this is one of the most annoying things that Matt does on the call-in shows. He demands concise answers, and anyone who wants to break down questions. Yeah, well, I agree with you there. I mean, it's one thing dealing with somebody like Jordan Peterson, who is, supposed to be a super intelligent person and used to presenting coherent, concise points, or at least he should be. He should have learned how to do that by now. And it's another thing when, John Doe calls in, or Jane Doe, or whatever, calls in, and they're not used to speaking on these things, on these subjects, and they need a little bit of help and a little bit of guidance, and they could be nervous as well. And I think you've got to make some allowance for that and give them a chance to make their point. And if they're struggling a bit, then to help them. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me see. So, what's my conclusion on all this? Um, well, I don't really see anything changing. I think that things will just go on as they are with Matt. He seems comfortable with the way that he runs the shows, and it doesn't look to me like he's trying to keep his zen. That he obviously feels that if he has these emotions, he can just simply express them. And to be fair, it's a very successful show. So I suppose they must be doing something right. But you can get viewers on YouTube by doing all sorts of crazy things. I've seen people going through a car wash with the windows wound down, getting completely soaked just to get a few million views. People are prepared to do almost anything to get plenty of views. And if I started doing outrageous things, I could probably boost my views as well. And if I started going into really angry atheist mode, then maybe I could boost my viewership, because people enjoy emotion. Of course they do. I also enjoy emotion. And I've been watching quite a few of these I'm dying of cancer videos have been appearing in my stream recently. And I watched one video, and I watched somebody crying, saying that their results are back from the biopsy. They've got stage 4 terminal cancer and they've got 2 months to live. And I watched that, and then more started appearing in my stream, and I watched a couple of those. I watched one where somebody was dying and he was talking about Jesus. So, and then actually I did a reaction video on that, because there are people out there dying of cancer who are religious and they're talking about their religion. I kind of find that interesting. But there are a lot of people getting very emotional because they've had terminal diagnosis. And I admit I've watched some of those, and I probably think that I probably shouldn't watch those videos, because I'm just feeding that obsession for raw emotion that people have got. Because look, when you go out onto the streets and you see people, you don't really see people being emotional, do you? I mean, on the whole, very rarely. Everybody is fairly cheerful, and you don't really see powerful emotions. So if you want to see powerful emotions, you can go onto YouTube, and Matt does express powerful emotions, which maybe is part of the reason that he's successful. Let's have a look. Mike Foster says, yeah, to the average caller, being rushed furiously by Matt into certain points must ironically feel a bit like being on the receiving end of a presuppositionalist. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose the worst person to deal with, I've never had to deal with him, and I probably wouldn't want to, is Darth Dawkins, who seems to be, by all accounts, and from what I've heard of him, quite a toxic individual. Somebody who has got a script. He sounds like a very controlling person, somebody who has got a script and he wants to impose it on you. And he's not really somebody that I would want to debate, because he seems to have this one script that he sticks to. And he's got a thing about atheists. He's got this thing about, I mean, it's not so much that he wants to demonstrate that his religion is true. He seems to be more interested in scoring points over atheists. Something which I've seen from people who leave comments on my channel. They just come on, score a few points, try and score a few points off somebody, and then they just vanish and disappear and go somewhere else, which I think is fairly pathetic. But There are all sorts of people out there. Watch special books for special kids if you like to cry. Well, I don't really like to cry, and I don't really like watching people crying either. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Look, what time is it? I've been on this for 50 minutes. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. So I've got nothing more to say at the moment, or at least I have got something more to say at the moment, but I've got my working day to get on with, and I've got my daily bread to earn. So thank you very much for tuning in, everybody that's made comments, and I will I will be back again. I'm going to be uploading some more videos to my channel from the show on Sunday, and no doubt I'll be doing more material throughout the week. Okay, so thank you very much, and bye for now.